Earth, Tokyo, April 2186. Amara Whitefang was not a Leyton, but that was what a human would call her. Despite the fact that she could not shapeshift, she was a white furred wolf who walked upright on her hind legs while wearing a trench coat and fedora. Amara was also the first of her species to ever visit Earth. Her people, who were actually called the Zammer, were from a moon they simply called home. It was in what they now knew were called the Terminus systems. Home was one of 5 moons that orbited a gas giant that the Zammer had named Light. Until 5 months ago, her people had been blissfully unaware that aliens existed. Then they had cracked space travel. They hadn't gone very far, just to Light's other moons. But on those moons, there had been the remains of multiple abandoned illegal mining operations. Alien mining operations. After 3 weeks of panic, which Amara had figured was understandable when your whole worldview was turned upside down, the Zammer had decided that they needed to come up with a plan. Said plan had been to retroengineer every scrap of alien technology found on the 4 moons. Well, with one exception. They had found 3 functional shuttles capable of faster than light travel. And inside those shuttles had been translation technology, along with database that had told them how to use the mass relays. One shuttle would travel to Thesha, the second would go to the Citadel, and Amara had taken the last one here. The assignment was simple. Find useful information and send it back to home so that the Zammer could prepare for formal first contact with the peoples of the galaxy. Amara had gotten a job working a store belonging to Mr. Tanaka. Tanaka was a kind, elderly man who didn't ask any questions and was simply glad to have an extra pair of appendages to help him. He had not been able to visit his granddaughter Hoshi, who lived on the Citadel, in ages. But with Amara tending his general goods store, he was able to go at last.
I love my apartment above this store. I've never slept this well before. And the neighbors are my friends. I'll be sad when this assignment ends. Except for Mister Rinch, who only complains and doesn't give an inch. I was sleeping in my room, not knowing what was going down under the full moon. 4 shots broke my dream, shattered them at the seams. Rinch is dead. This is really, really bad.
Amara had called the emergency services, who had immediately sent the nearest police unit to investigate. The officers had interviewed her, and she had simply told them the truth. They hadn't asked about her origins, and she hadn't told. The police were through the alley with a fine-toothed comb when Lieutenant Samuel Leyton arrived. An exchange officer from the New Scotland Yard, Leyton was a crack detective. Or so other people claimed. Sam simply did his job and ignored other people's opinions. He talked to the coroner, the forensic people, and read Amara's statement. Then he headed back to the station house. Getting under people's feet wouldn't do the case any good. The coroner and the forensic people who sent him their reports when they were ready. Besides, he already knew that the victim had been shot with a M6 Carnifex heavy pistol, which was a problem because it was a common weapon. So he started with research into the victim instead. Rinch had been a postmaster with the System Alliance Postal Service until an incident had led to his dismissal, which was how he had ended up running a shoemaker's store in Tokyo. But then he noticed the flag from Citadel security on the man's file. He had been wanted for suspected murder for hire. As he read that file, the pieces suddenly clicked into place.
This murder was about the shop. That's why they made this body drop. Rinch didn't own the store. It was so that he couldn't live there anymore. He rented it from the man next door. It belonged to Mister Tanaka, who also has buildings in Osaka and a few places on the Citadel, which connects to this case as well. Rinch hired Alexander Niles to make a kill, but only ended up with a bill. Niles tried to make 2 other people dead. That's where there's details to be had. It was Hoshi and Yuri Tanaka that were his marks. Niles was hired by loan sharks.
Sergeant Heron was sitting behind his desk when he received a message from a Lieutenant Samuel Leyton in Tokyo. Leyton was investigating the murder of a man called Gerald Rinch. Rinch had rented a shop from Yuri Tanaka. And Yuri and his granddaughter Hoshi had been the 2 people that Alexander Niles had tried to kill before the murder attempt that had led to his arrest. And then he realized what Leyton was saying. Back in the day, Yuri Tanaka had gotten money from a pair of loan sharks to start his business empire. Much to the sharks' dismay, his empire had taken off, and he was actually making enough money to pay back the loan. The thing was, they didn't want him to pay off the loan, they wanted his real estate. So they had hired Niles to assassinate Yuri and Hoshi. But Niles had botched the job, which had put him on CSEC's radar. Niles hadn't taken Rinch's job to kill Javier and Maria Rodriguez to make money. He had needed Rinch's money to give the loan sharks a refund. As for said sharks, they had moved on. Since killing Tanaka hadn't worked, they were now killing his renters, which put Amara Whitefang right in their crosshairs. Heron closed Leyton's message and activated his communications device. It was time to call in some favors. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Leyton was thinking this whole thing was too easy. His brother Paul was a playwright, and he'd say that this whole thing suffered from small world syndrome, that it was all too neat, too plotted to be a coincidence. Rinch just happened to contact the one killer on the Citadel that had tried to kill his landlord. No, somebody was arranging things. Somebody was pulling strings from the shadows. Leyton had assigned several officers to guard Amara Whitefang and the general goods store where she was living. But he had a feeling that this would not stop the people who were after her, so it was time to go to Plan B.
Our target is inside that shop, but every door is guarded by a cop. So we'll go into another building and descend below, 'cause that's the way it goes. The basements are connected by doors, which is how we'll get to the proper floors. That renter will die, and then we'll go goodbye. We know they are coming to kill,
the Tokyo police won the firefight with ease. 3 henchmen went in, none made it out. But even if the crooks had made it past the cops, they would have found that it was all for naught. Plan B had been to move Amara to a nearby hotel, and the assassins hadn't even noticed. They had walked straight into the Leyton's trap. With 3 bodies and plenty of evidence, the Tokyo police now was coming down on the loan sharks like a ton of bricks. They tried to flee off-world, but this was where Sergeant Heron's favors came in. There were plenty of people in System Alliance Navy who owed him one. People that had no problem with reducing a couple of empty private yachts to slag. Combined with warrants sent to all the right places, this blocked their escape. By the time the sharks were put in cuffs, Sam Leyton had made significant gains on chasing his puppet master theory. Rinch had been pointed towards Niles by an anonymous message. He had not been able to figure out who exactly had sent it, but he had solid proof that it had been sent from the Citadel. So he forwarded his findings to Heron. The CSEC sergeant was able to carry the inquiry to the finish, leading him to a woman called Danielle Harris. Harris was the System Alliance postmaster for the Citadel. While letters and other messages came in the form of emails these days, packages still had to be delivered the old-fashioned way. Hence, the System Alliance Postal Service had a small office on the station that competed with the Citadel Postal Service. When the old Grand Postmaster had retired, Rinch had been promoted to replace him. Harris had applied for Rinch's old job as head of the New York Postal Office. Instead, the job of leading the New York office had gone to Mackenzie Tyler. Tyler had ended up succeeding Rinch as Grand Postmaster when he had been sacked. As for the job of New York Postmaster, that had gone to an Asari called Yena Tikara and Harris. She was still stuck on the Citadel, with 0 chance of promotion. So she wanted revenge. She had exchanged messages with Rinch, steering him towards Tanaka's shop. And Niles' failed assassination attempt wasn't exactly top secret, so it made sense that she knew about it. She had connected Rinch and Niles. He had flubbed it, ruining Rinch's life. And even if he hadn't, she could have simply blown the whistle on him. The loan sharks murdering Rinch had not been part of her plan. Heron signaled to 2 other officers. It was time to confront Danielle Harris.
That job should have been mine. Rinch getting shot serves me just fine. He ruined my chances of getting away from the station. I could have been postmaster of an interstellar nation. I worked hard for that slot. A form letter was all I got. That bastard deserved to suffer. I hope to use Alexander Niles as a buffer. Yes, it has all fallen apart, but I will turn this into a new start. I will find a way to survive and to build a new life.
Harris hadn't put a fight. She had simply submitted to arrest. She was in the cells while Heron wrote his report. He finished and went to stretch his legs. Beyond the station house were several shops and a balcony that allowed for a view of the Citadel's arms. Normally, the view helped him relax. But recently, the view stirred something in the back on his head. Like there was a storm on the horizon, heading right for them. Heron just hoped that he would be able to guide his people, and the people he was sworn through to protect through whatever darkness was coming.